one occasion on which we'll question the internal validity of the estimate of the relationship between an explanatory variable and some outcome variable is when we think we have a sample selection issue. And it may be that we are missing data, and the pattern of missing data is such that the missing data is correlated with the outcome. That is, we're not seeing observations that we might have sampled from the population, and the reason we're not seeing those observations in our data set is because of the outcome that those observations might have. If that's the case, then the coefficient that we estimate will be biased. This can be illustrated with a pretty straightforward example. Suppose we were interested in the relationship between the wage and education. So we have a relationship where the wage is equal to beta 0 plus beta 1 times education. And let's suppose that we have data that looks like this. So we estimate a regression line that looks like this. We have, for people with 8 years of education, their wages are mostly clustered around $10 an hour. As the years of education go up, you still see some people with low wages here, 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 but more and more you see people with higher wages, and so there's a positive relationship between greater education and higher wages. Now let's suppose, though, that what happens in the world is that I've recolored the people who have low levels of education and low wages. I've colored them in blue, so there are these observations here on the bottom here. Now let's suppose that the way things work in the world is that those people who have low levels of education and who would earn low wages if they were in the labor force, they actually don't work in the labor force. They tend more often to stay at home and take care of children because they have low wages in the labor force. So we might observe those observations to be missing. That is, they're no longer there, and our data set instead might look like that, where this is what the data is that we have, in which case the regression that we might estimate might look like this, which is quite a bit different slope from the regression that we had earlier estimated with a slope that was considerably steeper. So in this particular example, we'll estimate it'll look like education doesn't have that much of a return because all those low wage, low education earners are not actually in our sample because they've chosen not to work. And so when we survey or sample from the population of people who are working and earning wages to see what the relationship is between education and wages, they're just not in the sample. And they're not in the sample because their outcome variable, their wage, would be really low if they were working. So that self-selection by workers, the low education workers who are in our sample are low education workers who for some reason or another have really high wages, and that tends to make the slope of our regression line flatter in this case than it would be.